Hi guys, welcome back to the 401 Files. Thank you for joining me here. I'm alongside Nick today. Nick got in touch with me through email. Was it YouTube first, Nick, or email? I think we talked a bit on YouTube first, didn't we?
Yeah, and then I think I found your page on Facebook and dropped you a message on Facebook.
Yeah, I never actually asked you, Nick. Was your experiences Bigfoot or UFO related?
Well, I've had a couple of UFO sightings over the years, and nothing, there's no like Travis Walton sort of anything like that, but just odd sort of sightings. And another one that I had in the States in '96 out on an exercise, which I don't know really what it down as, to be honest. It was very, very odd, middle of the night. And I saw something that I can't explain. And the digging that I've done, the reading and watching and listening to anything, and I've never really come across anything similar. Usually when people talk about Bigfoot, they talk about aliens or greys or dogman or whatever they talk about. There's like a commonality between some of these cases.
Yeah.
But I've never heard of anything that sort of resembles what I saw, to be honest, which was bizarre. And it's refreshing to be able to talk about these things. People just think you're a crackpot,
Absolutely. I've been there myself, where something strange happens to you, and it doesn't matter how you try to word it, or even if you try to downplay it, people will always think you're crazy, because there's this stigma about things that we talk about, extraterrestrials, these reptilians, things like that. People do have strange sightings, and there's no doubt about it. Too many people come forward with these things. But yeah, you're right. When you first had this experience, beforehand, you may have never believed or entertained anything like this, and then all of a sudden you're faced with this problem. Like, I know it exists now, but the minute you start talking about it. So you are in the UK, aren't you? You're living here in the UK at the minute.
In the UK, yeah, down in the Midlands, yeah.
And when was it that you had these experiences then? What year was this?
The weird one was not 96, but the three separate UFO sightings. The first one was probably in the 90s out in Norway. The second one was somewhere right in the middle of the Indian Ocean. I was doing a bit of once I left the Marines, I did some of that anti-piracy protection, armed protection on commercial shipping going to and from places around the Middle East, over the Indian Ocean. It was out in the Indian Ocean. And the third one was actually about 3 miles from where I am now. It was where I used to live in a place called Anslow. That was probably the better of the sightings, that I saw something for longer than the other two.
Have you ever experienced anything prior, like growing up as a child? Did you ever experience anything weird, whether it be paranormal or UFOs, anything like that at all?
No, nothing as a child. No, nothing like the first. I mean, I've always, ever since I can remember, I've always been interested in this stuff. Reading all the books and everything. And of course, back then, I'm obviously quite a bit older than you, but back then, where before the internet and stuff, all you had was, like Arthur C. Clarke's manuals on with a few grainy pictures in and stuff like that, and the odd TV documentary that would be on, and that was really it, apart from books, So you sort of, it was pretty scarce, pretty scarce, and certainly now for people who've had sightings, to connect with each other and talk about stuff is fantastic. There must be so many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of things going on back then that nobody would dare open their mouth about. But obviously things are different. Good.
And what was your belief before you had these experiences? Was you always open-minded about these things, or?
Yeah, I've always, you think about things like that. I mean, some people do, some people don't. But you think about these things, and you think, how can we be the only people, or the only sort of life on the only planet in the solar system or the galaxy or whatever? It's just more incredible to think that we would be the only things with life on it in the vastness of space than the chances are there's more of a chance of there being something else out there than there isn't. It's just odds, isn't it?
Yeah. So what year, sorry, did you say it was, Nick? The first one that you had, what year was that?
Going back to probably the 90s, we used to train in Norway every year. Keeping up with our Arctic warfare capability, So we used to, after Christmas, usually go back New Year on the 2nd, and then by the sort of 5th, you're on a plane or a ship and you're off out to Norway for 3 months training. So from about, it could have been any time, sort of mid 90s, I would say, something like that. 93 maybe, 93, 94. And you're out there for 3 months, and the very nature of military operations and exercises, most of the things you're doing are at night, obviously cover of darkness and all that. And so the skies that you see out there, the air is obviously a lot clearer. There's very little ambient light, if not no ambient light. So when you look up at the skies, especially in northern Norway, it is unbelievable. And all you can do is just stand there aghast, like staring at it. It's just the amount of stars is just phenomenal, and you can see anything. And on a few occasions, you've seen like satellites, which are like like a small star, really, in amongst the stars, just slowly drifting across the sky. And we were just looking up. You see shooting stars all the time. A couple of occasions we've been lucky enough to see the Northern Lights. Unbelievable. But then we saw this, what we thought was a satellite, and it was just dribbling across the sky. It must have been way above planes and everything, just right up there, tiny little thing, about the size of a star, and it was just dribbling across the sky like that. And then we were talking about satellites and everything, you got to stop talking about stuff, and then it just stopped, and then it's as if it like did a little U-turn and just started dribbling back the other way. And we were talking to each other, thinking, and at the time we never thought, satellites don't do that. We were just thinking, oh yeah, it must have just got the wrong course or something and dribbled back the other way.
Yeah.
But satellites
How many
don't
was there then? How many witnessed this?
There was 2 of us.
Yeah.
And then, it's like the middle of the night, and you're in the Marines. The lads are just, in a military environment, it's a harsh environment to start talking about things like that. You've only got to have one little deficiency in the way you look. You might have big ears or a big nose or whatever. You just get the piss ripped out of you constantly, all the time, about anything. So, the next morning you start talking about, oh, we think we might have seen a UFO. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to talk about things like that.
And then what happened? Did it just eventually go over the horizon or go out of sight? Or
yeah, I think we just carried on watching. I think it just carried on trickling back the way it came, and then we started talking about something else. Because like I say, we didn't really think anything of it at the time. We just saw it sort of stop and then turn around, and because initially you think, oh yeah, wow, that's a satellite. Isn't that amazing that was man-made? And you start talking about technology and how things got up there and everything, and then
of course,
and went back the other way. And I think we just lost interest in it and started talking about something else. But it's only later on you start thinking, hang on a minute, that can't have been a satellite. That's strange. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I can't imagine the feeling that gives you, because obviously, like you said later on, when you start going through the possibilities and you don't come up with one, it must be a great feeling to actually think that or feel like you actually experienced something. Yeah. When was the second experience that you had then?
Well, that was just after I'd left the Marines. So that was so it would have been 2012, probably February or March 2012, and I was basically did a load of courses and was involved in the anti-piracy sort of armed protection on shipping going across the Indian Ocean. And you're out. You're literally out there. You're in. It certainly makes you aware. I mean, we all see the satellite pictures and all the rest of it, and you go on planes and everything, but you could be on a ship for a week and not see another ship, not even a plane. The vastness of the ocean it just dawns on you that it really is an enormous, vast nothingness. It's like it intimidates you that much. It makes you want to jump off. But it's like on a ship, in the middle of the night, you're looking over. Obviously, the ship's darkened, for security reasons, so you can't see it for miles around, and you're looking over at the sea. And you just have to kind of check yourself. You're thinking, because you start drifting off thinking, what if I fell in now? Nobody would hear you shouting. You're just going to be bobbing around until you either give up and drown yourself or something eats you. And it's just, you have to kind of like snap yourself out of it and think, oh, no. Yeah, it's horrible. That's happened to a lot of people, stranded at sea, like you're saying. It must be horrendous.
Right. Yeah, it always makes me think of Titanic when I talk about the sea and people falling overboard, because I've said many a times before, is like when people talk about what do you think the worst way to go would be. For me, I can't imagine what it must have been like for those people on Titanic, surrounded by nothing but ocean and the stars above you, bobbing up and down. That must have been an absolutely helpless feeling, and a very horrible way to go. But yeah, so you're on this ship and you're in the middle of, what ocean was this? Sorry.
Indian Ocean, right smack bang in the middle. I'm in between Sri Lanka and on the way back to I don't know, somewhere up the Red Sea, so one of the sort of countries up there.
Yeah.
It was a car carrier, like a big, thousands of cars on this thing. Anyway, again, not a particularly spectacular sighting, but it was quite an overcast night. There was cloud cover, but pretty high up, high altitude cloud cover. You couldn't see any stars or the moon or anything like that. And again, out on the bridge, just middle, I can't remember what time of night it was. It was just sort of pitch black. Out on the bridge, just bimbling around. And you're just on watch, basically looking out for other little skiff boats and stuff, which is, out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. You're not gonna come across anybody out there. But anyway, again, just looking around, and something just whizzed across the sky like a shooting star, quite as fast as a shooting star would, but it just flew across the sky. I didn't get a look of a shape. It was just a light, but quite a dim light, not like a headlight or an aircraft light, or.
So it wasn't like emitting light. There was no glow on this thing or anything like that you saw.
No. It was just it's had its own illumination, but it wasn't bright.
Yeah.
It was luminous, but not bright.
Yeah.
And it just whizzed across the sky. And I was thinking, and then I thought, well, hang on a minute. You can't see any stars. You can't see the moon. It's overcast. Nothing I know of in space goes under the clouds. So that. Was it something military? They didn't make a sound.
I was just going to say, did it make some kind of a sound when it was past?
No sound at all.
Did it leave any kind of a trail? Do you know, like with a comet, you see the tail sometimes at the back, or any kind of anything like that?
No, nothing like that. No.
And that's absolutely amazing to think, because there's not, again, what is that? There's nothing that could be. There's nobody out there flying a drone. Do you know what I mean? It's not a plane. It's not a satellite. This is the stories that I love, is because when you see something like that, how do you explain it? I mean, there isn't anything we can pin that to. There's nothing that I know of that flies at that speed from one end of the sky to the other without making a sound.
It was. I didn't see it from the start. It just caught my eye, and I just looked up, and it was across. So I didn't see it from horizon to horizon. If you know what I mean. I just noticed it, looked up, and it probably at my, I don't know, like a 45-degree angle, and then straight across. It must have been a few miles away, probably high up, but lower than the cloud, and then just disappeared. And I just stood there thinking, what the frigging hell, what was that? And then you start thinking, what could it have been? And you count out meteorites, you count out satellites, you count out stars and planes and all that kind of thing. And you think, well, what else could it have been? It just rack your brains.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable, like you said, to experience something like that, because there isn't many things we can tie that to.
No.
So obviously you will have seen the Pentagon released footage recently of like the Nimitz encounters and the RAF, the Navy footage of the Tic Tac UFO.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. So do you think then, obviously, because there's a lot of people now that do say these craft are maybe submerging underwater and there's caverns down there and all this kind of stuff. Do you believe there's any truth to that? I mean, it is a vast. Under the ocean is a vast area. I mean, if there was one place you'd want to hide, if you had the capability of doing it, it would be under the sea, I suppose.
Yeah. So why wouldn't it be? I mean, there's a lot of cases of things in the sea, coming out of the sea, going back in the sea. There was I can't remember where it's called. Was it in Canada? Was it Shag Harbor or something like that?
Yeah, Shag Harbor, yeah.
Yeah, that was all. And they found that strange foamy yellow foam or something floating on the surface the next morning. I was like, yeah, it's just bizarre, isn't it? So yeah, maybe maybe in the middle of the deepest oceans, there's who knows what's down there. You know, it's
Yeah, because that footage looks pretty convincing as well. That's come from the Navy, doesn't like? Have you seen that?
That's military aircraft. I mean, they've got top spec acquisition equipment on there to pick up something and track it. You know, that's not a bird or, you know, a light aircraft or whatever else these things people say it must have been. You know, that was something out of the ordinary. Wasn't it traveling? I don't know how fast they said it was traveling.
Well, it ascended from about, I think it was something like 20,000 feet or something to a few inches above sea level in seconds, less than seconds, I think. So it's nothing that we're familiar with in terms of technology. But I've been watching a few pilots as well on YouTube. There's a few people that have got YouTube channels, and they're actually pilots themselves. Yeah. And they were saying that basically this guy to have even captured that thing did an amazing job, because that wouldn't have been an easy task by any means.
No. And it makes you wonder, you know, that's the one that they've released. It makes you wonder how much other stuff have they got that they haven't released, of, you know, things like that the military are, you know, sort of hushed up about and called into the office, and you don't talk about this, and, you know, and you think, why don't they just talk about it? If it's, you got to think somebody who's that high up in the, I mean, to be a pilot, a military pilot, you're quite high up anyway. You know, you're on the top pay grade. You are the cream of the crop of the sort of RAF or the US Air Force or whatever, as the pilot. You know, so you could jeopardise your career. You know, your pension. You know, you've got a family at home. You might, you know, your pension's at risk.
Exactly. I mean, we saw what happened with the Rendlesham Forest case, and some of the guys that came forward there. They went through some unbelievable treatment after coming forward and explaining their encounter.
That's a strange encounter. That's bizarre.
But again, like I said, these are credible people. I mean, Colonel Holt was obviously very high up, and this is an RAF base. Obviously, it was operated by the US, but they still are familiar with what known craft was around at the time and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so what they saw was definitely not explainable. I mean, this thing set lasers down and everything like that.
I mean, he's got the little transcript, he had a dictaphone with him, didn't he? So he's recording it on his transcript. I had a documentary I've seen about it, and there's that it flicks to this guy who's an astronomer, and he's talking about. Well, there's one guy saying he must have seen a lighthouse, which is about 9 miles away or something. You know, if he's in the middle of a forest and he can see a lighthouse, which is just ridiculous. Lighthouses don't hover down through the trees and sort of land on the ground that you're looking at 30 feet away. You know, in fact, didn't one of the guys touch it?
Yeah, they walked around it. One of them, I think it was Colonel Charles Holt, that took drawings in his sketchbook. But one of them, I think it might have been Jim Penniston, that actually put his hands on this thing and walked around it. So he actually physically touched it. It's not. This was no lighthouse off in the distance, but you do get that idiot that says it was.
Yeah, there's somebody else, an astronomer. He said, "Oh, so and so constellation was particularly bright that night. It must have been that." But oh, shut up! You know, it's just it's bizarre.
You're always going to get people as well. This is what's really annoying to me, is that we're in 2020 now, and we know more now than ever before about space and what's out there, and everything that we ever made a prediction about always turned out to be wrong until we found out later down the line with new technology that this is actually how it is. And so you would expect now people to be, you know, on board with this whole extraterrestrial idea, but yet still people refuse to believe it.
Yeah,
it amazes me.
I mean, this stuff, it's like the cryptid stuff. The stuff isn't there. You've got to put the time in, sifting through the crap, because there is a lot of crap out there. There's a lot of crackpots. There's a lot of idiots, which is the famous document. There was a documentary a couple of years ago with where they had Professor Brian Sykes, the English guy who was doing all the DNA samples and everything. You know, some of the people that were on that show, you think, why do you pick the most? You know, he's obviously off their heads on moonshine or something, running around the woods. Now, there's a lot more credible people out there in that field, and I think they just like to discredit it, to keep people thinking it's all a load of rubbish. That's the narrative they like to. You know.
So your third sighting that you had, then, do you want to just talk us through that and what happened there?
Yeah, that was probably the more interesting of the three, and I'd left the Marines by then. I was living back up here, and where I used to live, about 3 or 4 miles away from here, a little village called Anslow, and my kitchen was at the back facing east, and I was in the kitchen, nice bright sunny day. So I'm looking toward, not that I could see it, but sort of in the direction that I'm looking east out of my back window is East Midlands Airport, which is probably about, as the crow flies or as the planes fly, probably 12 miles, 15 miles, something like that. So you do get a lot of aircraft, certain times of year when they change the flight plans and everything, you get a lot of aircraft coming over, planes, low-flying planes coming into East Midlands 10 miles away. They're going to be at a couple of thousand feet, 2,000 or 3,000 feet, unmistakable. You know what a plane looks like. And also not far away, there's like there's a small light air, like I think you could pay to go and get taken up in a sort of light aircraft, things like one of them field airstrips there. So you get the odd light aircraft whizzing around the place as well. So anyway, so I'm washing up in the kitchen, looking at the window periodically up and down from washing up, and something caught my eye like a glint, like a flash, like something shining, like it, the signal mirror.
Yeah.
Something not quite as bright as that, but something. So I'm looking, couldn't really see anything. Thought it was something catching the window, carried on washing up, and then a couple of other times I saw it, and I swore I could have seen something, probably, I don't know, a mile away or something. I've got an air rifle with a decent scope on it, so I went and got that, and I'm pointing it out, trying to find where, because I couldn't really see it when it wasn't flashing. Managed to ping it with the scope, and it was quite faint. It must have been quite far away, but it appeared as if it was like a like a discus.
Yeah.
Shaped like a disc, but a discus that you throw at school, exactly that shape. But it was kind of rotating, but in a spinning plates on a thing, and it starts to sort of slow down a bit and start going like that. And it was just sat there, just doing that. And every so often, it'd like glint. It'd catch the surface of it. It'd catch the sun, which is what was glinting. And I must have watched it for 5 minutes, just sat there, not really moving. I can't remember if it moved left or right or anything, but pretty much in exactly the same place for about 5 minutes. Trying to zoom in and out on my scope and everything, because it was a zoom scope. Couldn't really make out any detail, but just a bizarre. It wasn't moving. There was no features or anything. There was no wings on it. I mean, planes move, don't they? You can see them for a couple of minutes and then they're gone. It was just sat there, just doing that.
Yeah, and you're going to get some people that will say that was a plane from the airport, but my argument to that would be, my argument to that is the opposite. Like, I think of it as in terms of, if you have lived near this airport, you're obviously familiar with seeing these things day in, day out, and you know what a plane is, you know what a light aircraft is. And so if anything, living close to the airport makes you more familiar with what this thing is or isn't. So
it wasn't a plane. It wasn't a plane. I mean, like I say, I watched it for 5 minutes, and when planes are coming in to land at East Midlands, they're sort of low, a couple of 3,000 feet, and you can see the belly of the plane. You can almost see the different colours. It's a big DHL hub is East Midlands, so you can even tell the DHL plane, so you can tell the features and everything. This wasn't a plane. It was sort of sat up there at a few thousand feet, just stationary for about 5 minutes. And no matter what, planes move quicker than that. They wouldn't be in sight for 5 minutes.
And they wouldn't be
gone further away from me, or left or right, and it had disappeared.
And they definitely wouldn't have had this unstable movement.
No, and I could quite clearly see it. It was a disc. I wouldn't even like to.
Did it have any depth to it? Was it quite? So how can I explain this? Was it like? Because some people report seeing like a cigar shape, and I always think that cigar shape, if you're looking at that, would be like a discus on its side. Was it like that? Did it have some depth to it?
As far as I could make out, it was a disc shaped. It wasn't, I wasn't looking at because the way it was shimmering around like that.
Yeah.
You could almost tell it was like a coin. Just you drop a coin on the table and it's doing that before it sort of comes to a hole.
Yeah.
it was doing that. So it was definitely a disc, like a discus shape.
Did it have any distinctive top and bottom? Could you tell the difference between?
Uh, yeah, not very clearly. It was
Yeah,
kind of, but it would keep glinting. Yeah, so the top of it would keep glinting. So where it was angled the certain way when it was
yeah,
revolving around, it obviously caught the sun in the right way and glinted the sun. But it was definitely disc shaped and
yeah.
moving in that odd way, just sat there. Who knows? I mean, you know, you go down so many rabbit holes, don't you? And it's kind of it makes you look at. I mean, I tell you, I thought I had a few months ago. I was chatting with somebody about it, and I said, look, if you look at life on this planet, all life, all animal life, we are the only living thing on this planet that has to cook food. We have to build houses. We have to wear clothes. You know, we have to work so hard to kind of shield ourselves from the environment. No matter where you live, you have to build a shelter. You know, whether it's in the Arctic or the plains of Africa or Europe, we have to build a shelter. We have to cook food. It's like we're not meant to be. Everything else, every other animal eats raw food to grow fur. They're adapted to their environment.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a penguin or a lion, wherever they are, they're perfectly adapted to where they are. Except us, there isn't anywhere on Earth really where humans are. Some people might be more in their element than others, but it's just like we sort of put here. Were we sort of, mixed with something else and just an experiment? Are we just an experiment? You look at the missing link problem as well. You know, everything stops at a chimp, doesn't it? And then there's like a big gap, and then there's us. It's like,
Yeah.
how can that be? So, there's crustaceans in billions of years ago that crawled out of the sea and, sort of evolved into whatever they evolved into. And now, we're kind of, it's like there's a big, massive gap, and then there's us.
Our closest ancestors or our closest descendant is the great apes, the bonobos and apes like that. And if you look at them, they're in zoos. We actually go visit them and we laugh at them when they do funny things behind bars. And
Yeah,
that's our closest living example
yeah,
is the great apes. And yet, like I've just said, we go to zoos and we take pictures of them, and there's a massive difference. So
yeah, yeah.
the gap, there's a bridge missing somewhere that
There
ties us
is, yeah,
together.
yeah.
Do you think that extraterrestrials are actually here then, like living amongst us?
I don't know. I mean, there's theories, isn't there? You mean like disguised as us? You mean,
Well,
or
any which way really. Like, do you think they could be disguised as us? Do you think they're living here on the planet, like we've spoke about under the ocean in caverns? Basically, do you think that they've got a full-time base here?
everything's a possibility. I mean, you look at theories of dimensions and different dimensions. I mean, who's to say? Who's to say they're not here, but in another dimension, and they know how to manipulate time and space enough to flip between the dimensions. Who's to say they're flipping off billions of light years away to somewhere else and then coming back? Maybe
Yeah,
they've done. Maybe, I mean, because then they talk about how there's dozens of different races of them. Not all of them
yeah,
like each other. Some of them are friendly, some of them aren't. So it
yeah.
makes you think, have they got burrowed out mountains and made bases there, or are they under the oceans? Are they?
I
Yeah,
asked I asked this question like when people say, "What do you think aliens want?" It's such an I mean, I do ask that question, but I have to kick myself as well because it is really a stupid question because that's like saying, "What do humans want?" We're all so vastly different. We all eat different foods. We have vegans, vegetarians, meat eaters. We have people that believe in government, people that don't, people that like sports, people that don't. We're all so vastly different. How can you say
yeah,
what do humans like or what do humans want? You can't because
yeah.
it's not just we're all different.
You've got to. I mean, when people talk about that, being like, what do aliens want? It's probably the same as what they would ask. I would imagine if we just turned up on their planet, they'd
Yeah,
probably be thinking, "Shit, what are they doing here? What do they want?" You look at the future, and it isn't good. You look at when we started to like the industrial age, when we discovered oil. I think everything started from when we discovered oil, really, and fossil fuels, like in the 1800s, and that is only a couple of hundred years. And look what we've done.
Yeah.
Back then, when the population was not even a fraction of what it is now, and now there's that many more of us with more technology, and we're still digging up and draining fossil fuels and using that to power things. And sooner or later, there's got to be, with the population growth. I think David Attenborough said it right on one of these programs. It's tripled. The population numbers have tripled since he started broadcasting in 19 whatever it was, and it's just growing at a sort of, the rate is just keeps increasing. It makes you think, how long, at what point do we say that's enough? That's enough people on the planet. We can't chop any more trees down. We can't. There isn't the room to grow enough crops. Farm enough cattle to feed everybody. It's and then it makes you think it's just going to collapse in on itself. There's going to be no food to feed people. There's no, no trees to sort of cleanse the atmosphere. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why Elon Musk is trying desperately to get people off Earth, because inevitably something's going to wipe us out, whether that's ourselves, a meteorite, or some disease. Like we've got the COVID at the minute, and Elon basically says that having all our eggs in one basket is an accident waiting to happen. And this is why there's this mad rush at the minute to get humans colonized on Mars, which I'm all for that. I love that idea because it makes a lot of sense. And like Elon says, I think if we are going to grow as a civilization, as a species, then staying on this planet isn't helping that in any way. So we do need to move on.
It's probably just going to be, who's to say that, there's theories that we didn't start on Mars. We've completely wasted the planet, and then we they were sending rovers to Earth, and although it's sunny down there, let's go there. And we've trashed this planet. We'll end up moving back to Mars. It's like over millions of years. I mean, who knows? But yeah, it's and they still can't cure cancer. There's too much evidence out there. I mean, not just for UFOs and stuff like that, but all this cryptid stuff, Sasquatch and all that kind of. I would like to think it's something's coming, some disclosure, something's coming. Like there's got to be, because sooner or later, I don't know. Do you follow Steve Isdale on YouTube?
No, I'm not familiar with his name.
Howtohunt.com.
How to hunt. Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, he's I mean, he's not connected. He doesn't. He's probably not everybody's cup of tea, but I tell you, he's got people racked up with things that all he needs is like permission to share this stuff. I think he's probably going to come out with some quite. That's if he doesn't mysteriously disappear beforehand.
Yeah. So, what's your take on the Bigfoot theory? Then, do you believe there is a creature out there?
Oh, 100%. I think there's got to be. There's got to be something out there. There's just been too many. There's too much evidence. And even the Patson Gimlin footage, what they've done these days, Thunker does a great job at breaking all that down with the measurements and everything. That is not a person in a suit. It can't be.
No.
With the the body dimensions and between the elbow and the shoulder and the wrist and the knee and the ankle, it just cannot, and it doesn't even look like a human in a suit. You've seen so many people faking things with a suit on, running around, and it just looks blatantly obvious that that's a person in a suit. That can't be a person in a suit.
No, I agree. The muscle definition, even if we just look at the muscle definition, there's not a suit out there that's replicated anything even close to that.
Certainly not back then.
No. But like, there are my questions to this though is how is it so elusive? Like, how have we not? Again, I suppose this is something that I need to remind myself of all the time, is that some of these areas out there are so vast that until you actually get an idea of how big they are, it's hard to imagine that something could stay elusive. But there's literally areas of forest now where you can fly over in a plane for hours and hours and not see anything but trees below. So people like me from the UK, and you've obviously looked into it yourself, so you're aware, you travelled with the army. But yeah, people like me who aren't that well travelled, it's hard to get my head around a forest so big that something could stay elusive. But I do know they exist.
Yeah, but you know, I think this is what I mean. I went through like a bit of a transition with this Bigfoot thing. I was kind of, I think, like a lot of people around my age group. I'll be 50 next year. So back in the, I don't know, early 80s or whenever it was, when I saw The Legend of Boggy Creek, which was just put out as a documentary stroke dramatization of this, you know, I absolutely shit myself. I was like, Jesus, and that was kind of my first sort of look into the subject, really, and thought, wow, there's got to be more to this. So then, like I said earlier, the only thing back then was like books, Arthur C. Clarke books with the odd grainy, which, I mean, the grainy picture was a still from the Patterson Gimlin footage, you know, and then the odd documentary that you saw. So it was just fascinating. So for a long time, just thinking, yeah, it was just a big gorilla, and yeah, it's vast out there. There's miles and miles of anything like that can hide and not get seen and everything. But then, you know, the more you get sort of into it, and the more technology there is now, and then the more sort of theories are coming out about things now. There's another. I reckon there's another aspect to them that people tend to shy away from. You know, I don't think it's just some big dumb animal like wandering around the forest. I think there's more to it than that.
If he was just like any other animal out there, he'd be seen and he'd be tracked just like any other animal out there.
Yeah. Plus the fact that Steve Isdall, he made something quite. I mean, he's every single animal on this planet in its native land, somewhere, somebody has got one of its heads mounted on the wall on a plaque. You know, the hunters have. So whether it's a leopard, a lion, a deer, a yak, a moose, whatever, every single big game animal on the planet has been hunted at one point by somebody, and there's evidence of it, either a skin in a museum or, no matter how rare it is, you know, the snow leopard from, I don't know where they're, is it out in the Himalayas or something like that? It's like there's only 200 in the wild, you know, but they've got hours of film of them hunting, and so something like an 8 foot tall, 800-pound ape, if you like, walking around. If that was just a flesh and blood ape that was just walking around without any other skills or anything like that, somebody would have caught one, shot one, proved it, you know, been seen, you know, real good footage of it. There's got to be something else to it. There really has. It takes so much time and effort to research this stuff, to get a kind of, to form an opinion, like, or to actually come to the realization that there's more to these things than just a flesh and blood you know, Gigantopithecus or whatever running around the forest. You know, you've got to put the hours in listening to stuff, credible stuff, watching things, reading, you know, to kind of form your own opinion. It's not something you can just explain to someone in 30 seconds. That just, you know, they might have seen the documentary with the Patterson and Gimlin and said, oh yeah, it's a bloke in a suit, and then, you know, if they don't want to be convinced, they're not open-minded about it, then it's pointless trying to talk to people about it. So,
yeah. What do you make of the UK wild man? I'm not sure if you've heard of that phenomenon before. The UK wild man.
Yeah. I've seen. In fact, where did I see it? I think there was a documentary on YouTube where Deborah Hartswell or whatever her name is. She was talking about an experience she had years ago, and then there was a couple of people in Scotland were saying that they saw something, you know, similar to that. So, I mean, that, if anything, the fact that it's getting seen in the UK should be proof to anybody that there's more to it than just a big ape walking around, because that, you know, there's got to be more to it. There is, I mean, the UK has got some wild and remote areas, but certainly nowhere big and wild enough to.
No, I agree.
A normal creature like that would need a big breeding population to survive. There's too many people walking around, you know, hikers, farmers, all this kind of stuff, you know. I mean, they've even been seen down not far from me in Cannock Chase. There's been sightings in Cannock Chase, which is 40 minutes.
Yeah, Cannock is a place that I hope to get to one day, because obviously lots of reports come from Cannock Chase. Even the black-eyed children are reported from Cannock Chase.
Yeah, read about that. Yeah. It's good. It's a creepy place. It's quite a bit. I mean, you know, you think the place like that is littered with people all over. There's mountain bike trails all around there. There's hiking trails all around. There's camp spots all everywhere. So it's, you know, there cannot be there cannot be an undiscovered species of 8-foot tall apes living in Cannock Chase. That cannot happen. There's got to be something else to it for them to be, not be seen more often. But it's not very often. I've only heard of a couple of accounts. I think 3 or 4 years ago there was something in the paper saying, red-eyed yeti seen in Cannock Chase or something like that. Typical news report. I think about regularly that sighting I had in '96 out in America when we were on exercise, and I still can't say it was an animal. I can't say it was. I don't know. I just can't explain. It was so fucking bizarre. The way it was night time and it was fast, but the way it moved was the creepy thing to me. And the fact that it was a few feet behind me. There must have been sat there. Both of them. There was two of them. One fucking dashed off. So it was '96, and the Marines did a big exercise joint with the US Marines over in America. It was all this joint. It was a big amphibious operation together with the US Marines, just to sort of. It was for the hierarchy, basically, just to tick a load of boxes about our joint operability and all that kind of thing. So we sailed over to America, did a bit of cross training at Camp Lejeune, which is in North Carolina. And then I think we embarked back on ship and sailed around a bit. And then we did like a nighttime amphibious landing at a place called somewhere on the east coast of North Carolina in the military training area, And then we moved inland and did a load of bits and bobs. The exercise was called Exercise Purple Star. We nicknamed it Purple Pants. It was absolutely shit. It was just for the hierarchy to kind of tick boxes. Us lads on the ground were just having a nightmare of it. A lot of sitting around waiting, and then a lot of moving from one place to another without knowing what the hell was going on, So anyway, we'd been on foot out in the cuds for a number of days, and it was night time, and it was the same night because I couldn't remember when it was, because I've actually sent this story off to I can't remember who I sent it off to. It was one of these podcast shows,
Yeah.
I can't remember anyway. So I couldn't remember when it was, so I Googled, because on that particular night there was a mid-air collision between two American helicopters, killing I think about 16 people killed or something like that. It was on that particular night. It was nowhere near where it was, a few miles away from where we were, but that was the night it happened. So so I think it's something like the 6th of May or something like that. So anyway, we'd moved further inland a bit, and we were across this area. We'd come out of this quite heavily forested area, a lot of pine trees and stuff, and we'd crossed this open area of like sandy tracks. Have you ever been to the States?
No, I've never been.
It was like a sandy. It was like a coastal forest up and down there. They were quite sandy. A lot of swamps and stuff as well, but it was quite sandy. So we'd moved across this area, and we'd gone to ground, as in gone firm. I think we were tactical, which means, you're being quiet, you're not shining torches everywhere, and you're whispering to each other and everything else. And I was at the back, and we'd gone firm, and I'd sort of sat back on this bank, like a sand bank, which raised up behind me up to about shoulder height, and then above, on top of that, there was like a thick area of brambles, and I think there was somebody else a few feet, probably 15, 20 foot that way, not too far away, because obviously night time you need to see when they're moving off so you can follow them, And anyway, just sat there, and I can't remember how long we were sat there, but when I just smelt this like a musty, the day after fireworks day, when your kids used to go out and used to sniff the empty fireworks, it was like but a bit more eggy, like a sulphurous eggy smell, mixed with that sort of burnt fireworks sort of wet smell. And I was thinking, because I was sort of sat there on my haunches, I was thinking, I'm smelling, when you've been out in the field a couple of days, you start to hum a bit, don't you? And I was thinking that's what it was. I thought I was smelling myself, get starting to reek a bit, because it's hot out there as well. And but then for some reason, I don't know, either I heard something, or something made me sort of look over my right shoulder, and I saw something like run off, like from behind me over to the right. Just leg it. No noise. I didn't hear any noise or anything like that. Couldn't see what it was. Couldn't see any shape or anything. I just saw something like light coloured at the corner of my eye, my peripheral vision, just run off. And I was like, what the fuck? So I sat back, put my hand behind me on the bank and kind of sort of sat up like that and looked over the top of this bramble patch. And then a few seconds later, another one ran off. Exactly the same. And it was, I say ran, it kind of moved really quickly. And it was big, much bigger than a human could be. But it wasn't the immediate thing, because, you know, when you see something different, your brain kind of tries to fit it or fit whatever it is into things that you know. So all I was thinking at the time was maybe it's something to do with the exercise. Maybe my brain sort of said maybe it was somebody in a big, I can kind of think, you know, like a big,
like a ghillie suit or something, or
no, not a ghillie suit, but like not a spacesuit. What are they called? You know, the big decontamination suit, like a nuclear fucking.
the hazmat suits.
Yeah, like that, but not. But you know, like just trying to think what film they've got them on. You know, at the end, have you seen E.T.?
Yeah.
You know, at the end of that, when there's all the like doctors and that chasing the thing up the road, and they've got all these big, because it's not like it's like a big over thing over their heads and everything, and it was kind of, that's all I could think of, that it was that, but the way they moved was, it wasn't kind of a human shape. It was more like a square and moving like, you know, using a map, sort of like that.
Yeah.
From what I could see, I mean, it was dark, but they were light coloured, like white. And I tell you, the only thing I can think of that I've seen, because I've read, I don't know, I've been searching for accounts for something similar that people might have seen. I've looked through God knows how many podcasts and sighting accounts and read different things, watched hours and hours of stuff on strange sighting, and I can't find anything that's. And then I saw something. I don't know if you've seen it. It's footage of you know, the Japanese tsunami.
Yeah.
It was either the Boxing Day tsunami or the Japanese tsunami, one of the two. There's some footage of a. It looks like a bit of smoke that comes out of when the water hits this building. It looks like a puff of smoke that comes up out of this building, but then it climbs up on the roof and it goes across the roof and up another. I don't know if you've seen it. It's not a puff of smoke. It's something that's got form and intelligence. And I looked at that and I thought, fucking hell, that could have been something like that,
Yeah.
in a bigger sort of. And it just fucking shot off, and the size of it. Oh, it was. There's no way it was a human. I was thinking it was something to do with the exercise, and there was people in the big decontamination suits doing something to do with the exercise, and they just fucking ran off. But then I started thinking that fucking no, people can't move that. A human cannot move that fast, and people aren't that big, even with the suit on. You know, it was twice the size, width anyway.
Well, I was going to say, with a suit on, it'd be even harder to move at that speed. So
yeah, exactly. And you'd hear something. You'd hear like rustling, and you certainly hear them tripping over, because there's no way they could move that quick without.
Did you research the area at all? Was there any other reported sightings of strange things in that area?
At the time, it was the middle of the night. You know, I mean, what do you say? Nobody else saw it. I mean, I think I said to one lad later on the next day or something, I said, did you see anything weird last night? You know, but nobody did. And I was thinking, what the fuck? How do you tell people? How do you say things like that? Same as I was saying earlier, with, like, you know, you're in the Marines, you don't fucking talk about things like that. You know, you just get the piss ripped out of you for the rest of the deployment. You know, it's like, and I've only ever told one other person that, and that's when we got back to the UK, and he was one of the lads in my troop, sort of thing. You know, he must have been out that night, and I told him, and he just looked at me like, yeah, what the fuck you on about, you a dickhead? I was like, you know, without somebody seeing that, it's very hard to, you know, even have the urge to tell anybody. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, if you see something like a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch or whatever, you've got, you know, you can kind of describe, you kind of know what it's going to be. In the daylight, it's going to be, I couldn't fucking tell you what these things were. I really couldn't. I don't, if they were in front of me now, I don't know. I've never heard
It's
of a sighting like
interesting.
it.
It's interesting that there was two as well. Like
Yeah.
you saw the first one. Was there any pause between the first one running and then the second one setting off, or was they kind of together?
No, but the first one, as I looked round, and I don't know why I looked round. I just looked round to my right, and the first one dashed off. So whether they were like right over my shoulder, I don't know. That's one thing. You know, like that's one thing that creeps me out. I'm thinking, what the fuck were they doing there? What you know, what were they
Well,
doing
imagine if
right
you was
behind me?
against that embankment and they was trying to reach down to snatch you up. That'd have been a creepy.
You know, yeah. I mean, I don't think it was
Imagine you
that.
sat there in the night time, in the dead of night, against this embankment, waiting to
Yeah,
move on, and there's some creatures lurking behind you. That's a creepy thought, is that?
yeah. So the first one disappeared. So then I sort of put my hand behind me, higher on the bank, and sort of lifted my arse off the bank. So I was on my heels and my left and my right hand, and I was looking up and over this bank because it was like the bank was only sort of, it's probably about just above where the back of the sofa is there. But then there was brambles and stuff over the top and going down back the other side. And I just put my hand and sort of went up like that to look, and then when I was looking, the other one went. So I would probably say between the first one going and me going like that, there's probably 3 seconds or something as I was looking over the bank, and then the other one went.
Wow.
And it went that fast. I don't know how close it was, but it went that fast. It was close. That must have been what I could smell, because it was something you don't, you know, when you're sweaty and you can smell your crotch after a few days, you know what that smell was like, you know.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that. It was like an eggy sort of phosphorusy burnt smell.
That's such a strange encounter. Very strange and creepy as well.
And it's racked my brains for, well, this was 96, so whenever that was, however many years ago, 24 years ago. People say they see like a grey Bigfoot, a white Bigfoot. I can't, you know, I've seen that footage. You know, the one, it gets filmed and then it sort of ducks its head and moves off of a white Bigfoot. It was kind of the colour was probably about the same, but I couldn't say, knowing what I do about Sasquatch and the shape and how, I don't know. I don't think it could have been anything like that. Maybe it was just a weird show, or maybe the way they moved and the speed. Maybe I was just, so maybe it could have been, but there was two together. I mean, to be honest, there was fucking hundreds of people all over the place, not running around everywhere you see, but on that training area that night, you know, that whole training area was covered in lots of different troops doing lots of different maneuvers, and there was helicopters and what have you. There was a lot going on with the exercise. There was vehicles moving around. It was pretty quiet and pretty remote where we were at that particular time, but you know, that whole area, that whole however many square miles of that area there was a lot of troops, American and British, all moving around that whole exercise area.
That's an absolutely amazing story. Everything about this story, the fact that you're in the Marines, so you're credible. The fact that, like you just said, tons of troops, British and American, were all in this area. It makes me believe that you guys maybe disturbed something. That's the kind of
maybe
process that
yeah, who knows? I mean, I've thought about that a lot over the years, and I still rack my brains. I think, what, you know, I'm thinking, was it something to do with aliens? Was it, you know? And I'm thinking, I smelt that, so I'm thinking something alien from another planet or wherever has been in my lungs. I've smelt.
Yeah, it's so weird how you. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
At what point then? At what point after did you start thinking, hang on a minute, this is a bit weird? At what point after did you start thinking like this?
Well, it wasn't. It was pretty much straight away. But I think, you know, straight away after I saw it, my brain started trying to fit it into something to do with the exercise, which is why I think I was telling myself it must be something to do with the exercise. But then, not long after that, when it was still fresh in my mind, I was thinking that can't be people. They wouldn't. Why would they be there fucking hiding behind me for a start? And then why And how could they have got away and run that fast?
With no sound.
Just the fast, with no sound at all. It was just, I didn't hear anything. Not that I remember it. And, you know, I think if I'd have heard something, that would have stuck in my mind. You know, it's hard to kind of write that down in an email or, you know, or write it. It's kind of something you have to be kind of quite descriptive saying it. I feel like I can't describe it if I'm just writing it.
I know it's very difficult to answer this next question, but would you, if you had to say, this was more a physical form or something more paranormal, something more of an entity?
I would say it had a physical form because I saw it.
Yeah.
But it probably had some kind of paranormal.
Because the movement seems abnormal.
It was just weird. It's just how it moved. It just didn't seem. It didn't move like anything I've ever seen before or since, and at the speed it moved. You know, I've seen people move quickly, sprinters. You know, I've done a lot of martial arts, so fighters moving quickly. It just fucking with it. It just bolted. And I'm talking, you know, anything you see on TV, animals that get scared by a predator, or, and you know, they're out, they blocks, and they're gone on. And it was quicker than that. It'd be fucking twice the distance away. It was just, it didn't seem normal. And I still can't answer what I saw. I don't know what it is. I tell you, it feels good to talk to you about it because you're that way minded of thinking that something it could be, not just looking at me thinking, what the fuck is this idiot talking about? You know,
no, definitely not. If anything, this story intrigues me massively. So it's been an absolute pleasure to listen to it.
Yeah. So
fascinating. Have you ever heard of the Glimmer Man? This is something that's quite new to me as well. Is the Glimmer Man? So people report seeing this. I don't know whether you want to call it an entity or some kind of a figure of some sort that looks like. You remember the Predator films where Predator would go invisible? He'd use the cloaking device.
I knew you were going to say that when you said Glimmer Man. And I've just watched David, that kind of missing project. David Pleiades, he's just his latest video. I've just watched that, and he talks about something like that. He read out an account of somebody somewhere that saw something like that. And since that Missing 411, the Hunted documentary, and that lady up in the tree stand that saw that thing, he said he's had so many emails about that kind of entity, or she said it was more like a sheet drooped and it just reached across and went to the other tree and something. But how it coincided with a UFO sighting, like a few hundred meters away at that school.
It's terrifying. I've heard a lot about this Glimmer Man now, or this entity, whatever it is, and I just can't think of anything worse. I mean, if it wasn't bad enough growing up with the Predator movies and seeing how that thing looked, imagine seeing it in real life.
But I mean, it is the thing. So, you know, you're in the forests of North America, like you know, a lot of people know that Bigfoot exists, so they're expecting to, if someone's around, to see a big fucking 8-foot thing standing there. Which, if they look around and it's not, they probably feel quite safe. But who's to say that it's not cloaked itself like that, and it stood fucking 2 foot to one side of you, and he just stood there watching you. You know what I mean? That you know, to think that could be, you'd never get out your truck, would you?
No, absolutely terrifying.
Oh.
But again, though, like, and I've talked about this quite a lot as well, is that some of these movies, I believe they touch on quite a lot of stuff that has either got some truth to it, or it's technology that they're sitting on that they're already aware of. But a lot of these movies that come out, people report seeing these things in real life. So we've got the Glimmer Man with Predator, like I said to you about the movie Signs, with my sighting of this green creature, and it's just crazy how many things movies get right.
It's almost as if somebody is sort of steering Hollywood in such a way. Why don't you make a film with this in it? Why don't you make a film about that? Why don't you make a film about this? It's as if Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. It's as if it's like Hollywood is kind of drip feeding.
Exactly. And I mean, if you look at Star Trek, for example, when people started to first watch Star Trek, they were seeing things like automatic doors, and everybody was blown away by this. Oh my God, how does this door know to open when you just walk up to it?
Yeah,
Now we've got them in every
yeah,
supermarket.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
That's it.
I've kind of I've been, regardless, aside from like I'm mainly sort of more focused on sort of Sasquatch stuff. That's got me interested. Sort of anything to do with that, I'm sort of straight into it. But I'm kind of keeping an eye on sort of the nature of reality kind of stuff. Anything that comes out on that kind of, because people
Yeah.
are talking about everything is just an illusion, aren't they? All this is just an illusion. And then when you think about things like virtual reality and holograms and all this fucking everything is becoming fake, isn't it? Everything's the lies that the government tell you, holograms, virtual reality on the TV, CGI and all that. It's like women getting themselves made to look something like they're not. It's just everything's becoming fake, isn't it?
It's been absolutely awesome, Nick, speaking to you tonight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and look at how to play this. I might actually make one release of our extraterrestrial chit chat, if that works, and then do the other one of your Bigfoot creature type sighting as a second release. But if it works as one whole video, then I might do that as well. So I'm just going to have a look at how this plays out and go from there as well. But before I go, I just want to say to everybody watching this or listening, remember, if you have had a strange experience or a strange encounter, and you feel like you want to speak about that, and for me to share this on my channel so other people, like-minded people, can relate, then please do send me that encounter to 401files@gmail.com. So if it's an extraterrestrial encounter, a UFO sighting, something like that, or maybe an encounter that you've had with Bigfoot, please do send that to my email address, and we'll have a chit chat maybe on Skype, like me and Nick have here tonight. And it's always about sharing these encounters, these strange experiences, because, like Nick said tonight, sometimes it does help to get these things off your chest with like-minded people. So, Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you tonight. I really have appreciated it. So, thank you for coming on and chatting to me.
Yeah, no worries. Good to talk to you.
Yes, it's been an absolute pleasure. Like I said, I've really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to edit this now and get this out there. So, you take it easy, Nick, and until next time, keep in touch as well. Keep in touch with me.
Yeah, definitely. I'll look at that Scott Nelson video. I'll send you the link.
Brilliant. Cheers, mate.
All right. Cheers, man. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.